You type out a post, stare at it for 20 minutes, and right as you hit send, your stomach drops. Or you walk into a crowded room 5 minutes late, and you know with absolute certainty that every single person turned to judge you. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. It's a documented cognitive bias where we drastically overestimate our own visibility to others, convinced we are the center of every room we enter. To test this, psychologist Thomas Gilovich ran an experiment at Cornell University in the year 2000. He forced students to wear an embarrassing Barry Manilow t-shirt and walk into a room full of their peers, certain they were about to be the target of universal judgment. While the self-conscious students guessed that half the room would notice the shirt, looking at the data reveals the actual crowd remembered almost nothing. Fewer than 25% of the students even registered that someone new had walked in. This gap suggests our feeling of being scrutinized is a neurological anchor. We are trapped in the intensity of our own self-awareness, assuming everyone else is watching our movie when they're actually busy starring in their own. This anxiety exists because for 300,000 years, humans lived in small tribes of 50 to 150 people. In that world, your social reputation was a primary survival tool. Being seen as weak or strange meant being cast out of the group. Leaving the safety of the fire meant immediate vulnerability to predators. For our ancestors, social exclusion was a death sentence, so our brains evolved to treat any potential judgment as a high-stakes threat. But we no longer live in a tribe of 150. We live in a world of 8 billion, passing more strangers in a single week than our ancestors met in an entire lifetime. Social media curation is an ancient survival mechanism misfiring. It forces us to manage an audience of millions using a brain that is still biologically terrified of being left alone in the dark. To protect ourselves from this imaginary spotlight, we build armor. We curate flawless lives online and perform perfection in person, hoping to eliminate any surface someone could judge. But this armor triggers a psychological paradox. When a person appears entirely flawless, others find it difficult to feel genuine connection. A person without visible flaws can register like a statue on a wall. We might admire a statue for its beauty or its craft, but its lack of humanity makes it impossible to relate to. Perfection creates a social barrier. By trying to avoid judgment through a polished exterior, we inadvertently create a biological distance that prevents the very connection we're looking for. In 1966, social psychologist Elliot Aronson discovered a way through this barrier. He designed an experiment to see how making a mistake impacts our likability. Subjects heard a man auditioning for a quiz show. He answered 92% of questions correctly. On a second tape, he was equally brilliant. Until the end, listeners heard a clatter, an embarrassed laugh, and him admitting he spilled coffee all over his suit. The data showed a massive shift. The brilliant man who spilled his coffee was rated as significantly more likable than the version of himself that stayed perfectly polished. Aronson called this the Pratfall Effect. A small, visible flaw sends a quiet signal that you are a real human being rather than a performance. That signal lowers the social barrier, making an admirable person feel reachable. However, the Pratfall Effect has specific requirements. A mistake doesn't automatically make someone more appealing. There is a competence prerequisite. You have to be seen as capable before you stumble. If an unimpressive person makes a mistake, the brain registers it as proof of their inadequacy, rather than a moment of shared humanity. This is why the world fell in love with Jennifer Lawrence when she tripped while walking up to accept her Oscar. Her competence was already proven by the statue in her hand. The fall just made her feel real. There is also an authenticity prerequisite. The mistake must be real. The human brain is incredibly good at detecting manufactured vulnerability, and we instinctively pull away from it. Vulnerability without substance registers as weakness, and fake humility triggers our social defenses. To connect, the crack in the armor has to be genuine. Much of the energy we spend on curating a perfect image is wasted on an audience that barely exists. The people we fear are entirely consumed by their own internal spotlights. They are far too worried about their own flaws to spend their time scrutinizing yours. Because the spotlight isn't real. The stage isn't real. You can stop performing a flawless life and finally start living one. People want someone good enough to respect and real enough to trust. Subscribe to Ethos Psyche to keep decoding the ancient software running your modern life.